and welcome back to the Azerbaijan YouTube channel. It is Harry here, and today it is time for a video on domestic cup competitions because, quite frankly, I don't give them enough love on this channel, and it's time to put that right. One of the main appeals of domestic cup competitions across the globe is that lower league teams are often pitted against teams who are much superior to them in a sort of David versus Goliath situation, facing them in a one-off tie to see who will progress to the next round. It's why you hear, in England at the very least, things like the magic of the FA Cup, or giant killings, or underdog stories just thrown about almost ritualistically whenever domestic cup games are on. However, what about those teams who defied the odds completely and didn't just beat one major club in a particular season, but actually managed to make their way to the final of their country's domestic cup competition? Well, in this video, that's exactly what we're going to find out, as I'll be taking a look at Europe's top 15 countries as per the current UEFA coefficient rankings and seeing who was the last team to reach a cup final who wasn't playing in their respective nation's top flight when they achieved that feat, as well as the non-top flight team who was the most recent to lift the trophy, if of course there is one in the particular country in question. If you're going to enjoy this video, of course, please don't forget to hit that like button because it really does show your support for the channel. Subscribe if you haven't done so already, and let me know any other ideas that you want me to explore in the comment section down below. But without any further ado, here is a rundown of the last non-top flight team to reach a cup final, or indeed the last non-top flight team to win a domestic cup competition in Europe's top 15 countries. Greece. Nobody. Well, we're off to a great start. Yep, Greece's domestic cup competition has never had a single representative from a team below the top division even so much as compete in its final, although thankfully this is the only country out of Europe's top 15 countries where this is the case. There were a couple of instances in which a team was relegated the season that they reached the showpiece event, including Herakles in 1980. Herakles' story is an interesting one, as they were found to have attempted to bribe PAOK defender Philotas Pelios to throw the second leg of their cup semi-final that very year, so despite finishing in a very healthy 8th place in Greece's top flight, they were forced to be relegated by the authorities once the allegations came to light and were proven true to the Beta Ethniki, then Greece's second tier, and they ended up losing the final in 1980 anyway to Kastoria. Schweizer Cup, Lausanne Sport in 2010. Lausanne Sport, who I'll always remember as being the worst team on the game on FIFA 07, are the most recent non-top flight team to reach the Schweizer Cup final when they achieved that feat 12 years ago, although it wouldn't prove to be a happy memory for them as they were promptly thrashed 6-0 by Basel. Unbelievably, they made it through the qualifying rounds of the following season's Europa League in spite of still competing in the second tier and made it to the group stages, although they only picked up 1 point from 6 games in a group containing CSKA Moscow, Sparta Prague and Palermo, and promptly finished last. The last second tier side to win the Schweizer Cup is actually one of the most successful sides in the history of the competition, namely FC Sion, who have won 13 titles in their entire history, the joint second most in the history of the Schweizer Cup alongside Basel and only behind Grasshopper Zurich, who have 19. In 2006, they overcame national powerhouses Young Boys on penalties after a 1-1 draw in the final to become the only second division team in the history of Swiss football to lift their domestic cup, and they coupled it with promotion back to the top flight. Belgium, KV Mechelen in 2019. First Division B outfit KV Mechelen came into the 2019 Belgian Cup final having won their promotion playoff 2 months beforehand, but then became the subject of a match-fixing scandal for offences that were committed during the previous campaign. Their promotion to the top flight was revoked and they were deducted 12 points for the 2019-20 campaign, but they were permitted to play in the Belgian Cup final for 2019 against Ghent, becoming the first second-tier team to take part in the showpiece event for 18 years, and they won it 2-1 thanks to goals from Nicolas Storm and Herman Mera Cáceres. What's more, they then found a loophole in the Belgian FA's system that stated that no club could be charged for offences that were committed more than 12 months prior, so they successfully appealed, kept the cup, were reinstated in the top flight and had their points deduction removed, although they couldn't compete in the Europa League or the Belgian Cup the following season as a slightly lesser form of punishment. Ukrainian Cup, Inhredets Petrova in 2019. Of course, before I get into this segment, I can't overlook the events that are happening right now in Ukraine, with obviously Russia having invaded it. My thoughts and prayers are with the people of Ukraine and the immense solidarity and bravery that they are showing in times of what I can only describe as a living hell is remarkable. I don't want to get too political on this channel, that's not my aim, but one thing I will say is that this isn't the time to say, oh, well, this wouldn't have happened under so-and-so's administration. This is a humanitarian issue that will affect every single person in Ukraine and may well affect everyone else across the globe to some capacity. So I just thought I'd preface the segment on the Ukrainian Cup with this. Again, I'm also aware that football is obviously an extremely irrelevant talk in conversations about Ukraine right now, but they are a part of the top 15 leagues by UEFA coefficient right now, as are actually Russia, just as to preface it. So I have to talk about them in this video, but out of respect, I'll keep it brief. Only one team has ever made the Ukrainian Cup final, namely Inhulet Petrova in 2019, although they were comprehensively beaten 4-0 by Shakhtar Donetsk. Interestingly enough, all bar 3 of the Ukrainian Cup finals that have taken place since 1992 have featured one or both of Shakhtar and Dynamo Kiev, with only 1992, 1994 and 2010's finals seeing neither of the two take part. Kup Serbia, Savojno in 2009. It's a similar case in Serbia with Ukraine, as in the 16 years that the Kup Serbia has been running since Serbia split from Montenegro to become independent, there hasn't been much room for lower league sides in their domestic cups latter stages. Savojno are the only team to make it through to the final despite not being a top-tier side in the country's history, when they were comfortably dispatched 3-0 by Partizan Belgrade in 2009, although they did compete in the new Europa League in 2009-10, beating FBK Kaunas of Lithuania on away goals before losing 4-0 on aggregate to Lille. Within a year, they no longer existed, as they emerged with FK Sloboda Uzice in July 2010 to compete in the top tier for 9 seasons, but after falling on financial hardship, the club was demoted to the 4th tier in 2019, and now find themselves at tier 3, the Serbska Liga Zapad, and I apologise completely for the complete butchering of that pronunciation. The Russian Cup, Krylia Sovetov Samara in 2021. As mentioned, given that Russia is part of the top 15 leagues as per the coefficient rankings, I have to give them a mention, but again, I will keep it brief out of respect for what's going on right now. Krylia Sovetov Samara fell 3-1 to Lokomotiv Moscow last season in the most recent appearance by a second-tier side in the competition's climax, but in 2004, Akhmat Grozny did what no other non-top flight club in Russia has done either before or since, as they defied the odds to defeat the team who finished 3rd in the Russian Premier League that season to lift the Russian Cup. That team, coincidentally enough, was Krylia Sovetov Samara. The Scottish Cup, Hearts in 2020. Even though there have been 2 very recent examples of teams outside of the SPL reaching the Scottish Cup final, both of those occasions involved traditional giants of the Scottish game who had fallen on respective hard times. However, Hearts' 2020 Scottish Cup final appearance actually came during the 2020-21 season, by which point they were in the Scottish Championship, as they'd been relegated the previous season, which had been truncated as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Because of the situation in Scotland and the season's cancellation, the latter stages of the Scottish Cup were delayed until midway through the following campaign, so therefore Hearts do kind of have an asterisk next to their name, since they started that particular edition of the Scottish Cup as a top-flight side. If you discount that, then you only have to go back to 2016 for an all second tier final, although that was contested by Hibernian and Rangers, which in almost any other season would have been an all Scottish Premier League encounter, but Hibs emerged triumphant that day by 3-2. The ÖFB Cup, SC Austria Lustenau in 2020. Although the answer to the question outlined in the title of this video is SC Austria Lustenau, who came in 11th place in the Österreichische Zweite Liga in 2019-20 but were thrashed 5-0 by Red Bull Salzburg in that year's ÖFB Cup final, I want to focus this particular segment on FC Pasching. They are a unique team in this list, since when they won the ÖFB Cup in 2013 by defeating Austrian powerhouses Austria Wien 1-0, they weren't in the second tier, but they were in fact residing in the Regionalliga Mitte, which is Austria's 3rd tier. They had also defeated RB Salzburg and Rapid Wien, Austria's other 2 most successful clubs, on their way to glory, and they even gained a license to participate in the Europa League the following season, although they were agonisingly defeated by Portuguese team Estoril Praia in the playoffs for the group stages. They formed a syndicate with LASK in 2014 and changed their name to FC Juniors UU in 2017, and although they became an independent team once more in 2018, they still maintain close ties to LASK but are in the Zweite Liga relegation zone right now. The KNVB Cup, NEC Nijmegen in 1994. The Dutch Cup has been running since 1898, but in its entire history, just one team who didn't play in the top flight during a particular season has ever won it, and that occurrence predates the Eredivisie days by quite some time. In 1926, when the Dutch league was split into 5 regional divisions, TSV Lange still somehow didn't form a part of any of them, yet they smashed the Spartan of the Eerste Klasse West-Zwee 5-2 in the KNVB Cup final to pick up, as far as I could tell, the only major trophy in their history. However, NEC Nijmegen's run to the final in 1994 is the most recent one by a side competing outside of the Eredivisie, although they couldn't couple their promotion to the top flight that season with a cup win, as they were narrowly beaten 2-1 by Feyenoord. The Taça de Portugal, Chaves in 2010. Similar to the Primeira Liga, the Taça de Portugal has been dominated by Portugal's big three, namely Benfica, Porto and Sporting Club de Portugal, as they have won a combined 60 of the 81 tournaments that have taken place so far. It is perhaps unsurprising that none of the other 21 trophies have gone to a team outside of the top flight, although Beira-Mar did win it in 1999 whilst also suffering relegation from the Primeira Liga. A team from the second tier who did reach the final though was Chaves in 2010, but a star-studded Porto side containing the likes of Hulk, Freddy Guarin and Falcao proved too much for them as they overcame the Minnows by 2-1, with the latter two players both getting on the scoresheet. Coupe de France, Les Herbiers in 2018. The Coupe de France is quite notorious for seeing underdogs make their way through to the latter stages of the competition, and 8 non-Ligue 1 teams have reached the final in the 21st century, including 4th tier Calais in 2000, who only lost 2-1 to a Nantes side who were gone to win Ligue 1 the following campaign. Guingamp are the only one out of those 8 teams to win it, when they defeated Rennes 2-1 in 2009, but National outfit Les Herbiers emerged out of 8,506 teams to compete in the final in 2018 alongside Behemoth's PSG to mark the most recent occasion of a lower league team making the grand finale. Sadly, they lost 2-0, and just 3 days after that game, they were relegated to the Championnat National 2, the same division as PSG's reserve team. The DFB Pokal, MSV Duisburg in 2011. 3 teams, namely Schwarz-Weiß Essen in 1959, Kickers Offenbach in 1970 and Hannover 96 in 1992 have picked up the DFB Pokal alongside competing in the country's second tier, with 11 more, including 3 third-tier sides, reaching the final, the most notable of them perhaps being Hertha Berlin's second team in 1993. But it is MSV Duisburg who were the last of that collective to reach the final, when their 2011 appearance ended in a 5-0 thrashing at the hands of Schalke. The Coppa Italia, Ancona in 1994. The very first Coppa Italia was actually won by a team not playing in the top flight, with Vado shocking Udinese with a 1-0 extra time win exactly 100 years ago. However, only one other team has managed a similar feat ever since then, and it was Napoli in 1962, when they beat Spal 2-1. 4 more second tier teams have qualified for the final, but all of those appearances ended in defeats for the underdogs, with the most recent being Ancona in 1994, who managed to draw the first leg of the final 0-0 against Sampdoria, who were European Cup finalists 2 years prior, but they were then annihilated 6-1 in the return leg and saw their dreams shattered. They were dissolved 16 years later. The Copa del Rey, Castilla in 1980. No team from Spain's lower leagues has ever picked up the Copa del Rey, or the Copa del Generalissimo as it was known under General Franco's dictatorship. As far as I could tell, only one has ever played in a final, and remarkably, it was Real Madrid's second team, Castilla, when they played in the 1980 final against, well, their senior team. On the way to the final, they beat 4 La Liga outfits, namely Hercules, Athletic Bilbao, Real Sociedad and Sporting Gijón, but in the big game, Real Madrid's first team comprehensively defeated them 6-1. I can only assume that both sides participated in the post-match celebrations with equal merriment. Otherwise, either which way, Real Madrid were going to win the Copa del Rey that year. It was just a question of which one. The English FA Cup, Cardiff City in 2008. Finally, we reached the English FA Cup, the oldest still active domestic cup competition in the world. In its 150-year history, 25 teams have reached the final despite not being in the top flight at that time, with the most recent of them being Cardiff, who coincidentally enough are Welsh of course, in 2008 when they were defeated 1-0 by Portsmouth in a season where I believe 3 championship teams actually made the semi-finals. 8 of those 25 went on to upset the odds and win the final, including Tottenham in 1901 when they became the only non-league side to ever lift the trophy, and West Ham in 1980, whose shock 1-0 victory over Arsenal is the final time, at least at the time of this recording, that such an event has happened. And that just about wraps up today's video looking at the most recent occurrence in Europe's top 15 countries in which a non-top flight team has reached, or indeed won, the domestic cup competition in that particular country. If you enjoyed it, like I said at the start, please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and ring the notification bell to get notified whenever I upload a video straight away. And if you've got any other ideas that you want me to explore, stick them down in the comments below and I'll do my best to make them happen. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you then.